This is Standing Watch. And now, Evangelist Norbert Link.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. Many feel that Donald Trump, and not only he, is sleepwalking through the minefields of this dangerous world because they don't understand what is happening and what is going to happen. The feeling is he and others are detached from reality. An interesting article was published by Handelsblatt on December 11, talking about the fact that there isn't much time left. And the article said, the US is now among those who want to destroy the EU. But as so often, Europe needs time to grasp the extent of what has been happening since the Trump administration took office. Europe needs a defense union, and not among all EU members, but among those who are capable and willing. Such a development requires political leadership and the courage to break with old traditions. There isn't much time left to set such developments in motion, because Europe's adversaries are already actively working to weaken or even destroy it. This article, in so many words, talks about the creation of several core nations under strong leadership. Now, the Bible tells us that there are going to be 10 nations or groups of nations in Europe, which will give their power and their authority to a charismatic leader called the Beast in the Bible. Now, Trump is sleepwalking when it comes to the relationship to Europe because he doesn't understand and know the Bible. Focus, another German magazine, wrote on December 12th. One absurd statement followed another. US President Donald Trump claimed during a speech on Thursday that European nations viewed him as a leader and respected him like never before. Now we have the greatest country in the world. Everybody says it. Other heads of state and governments say it. The European nations say it. The European nations are saying your president could just as well be the leader of the European nations. They are listening to us and respecting us like never before, he said when he addressed the American people. I need to ask, in what dream world does Trump live? Trump is probably Europe's most hated American president in recent history. Trump is sleepwalking because he doesn't understand the dynamics of the European-American relationship as described in the Bible. Now an article by NTV, another German outlet, dated December 13, saying this. Chancellor Merz heavily criticizes the policies of former Chancellor Angela Merkel. He says that we should have known what kind of times we are living in, even before February 24, 2022, the day Russia launched its large-scale invasion of Ukraine. The day we should have known was in May 2014, when the war in the Ukrainian Donbass, initially waged covertly by Russia, escalated. In those days, a historical analogy was frequently invoked, Merz says. 2014 was compared to 1914, the beginning of the First World War, in which Europe sleepwalked. Notice, sleepwalked. It would have been much more accurate to see 1938 as the historical analogy, the Munich Agreement, in which Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain ceded the Czechoslovakian Sudetenland to Nazi Germany. Indirectly, Merz is thus comparing Putin to Hitler, and of course also he was comparing Angela Merkel to Chamberlain. Again, if we fast forward to today, we see that Europe and America, to be more precise, Europe under Chancellor Merz and America under Donald Trump, are sleepwalking because they don't know and understand the Bible. let's talk about the situation regarding Russia and Ukraine for a moment. See, now Europeans and the Americans came together in Berlin, Germany. And of course, Zelensky was present as well. And apparently they came up with another peace proposal. And Germany already celebrated that as a great success because now the Americans and the Europeans came together to agree on something. It was clear from the outset that Russia would not agree to it. And sure enough, voices already came from Russia saying, nope, no way are we going to accept that, and we don't even know for sure what was all in that peace proposal. They said we don't even agree to a ceasefire. That was one idea, to at least have the war cease for a while over Christmas. They said, no, not going to do it. It was clear from the outset, but those people were sleepwalking into this kind of scenario, even though it was obvious that they would be unsuccessful. I'd like to briefly address Trump's outrageous, vicious, and as some have said, insane ranting on Rob Reiner's murder. The New York Post, which is normally a pro-Trump media outlet, and most certainly conservative, wrote on December 15. President Trump on Monday said murdered actor-director Rob Reiner had driven people crazy with his opposition to the Republican chief executive, with his bizarre ranting post on Truth Social, prompting outrage from critics of all political persuasions, left and right, liberal, conservative. Piers Morgan from England even said, ordered, according to the news articles, ordered Trump to take away that post from Truth Social. It says here, first of all, that Reiner and his wife Michelle were found butchered in their Los Angeles home Sunday afternoon, allegedly at the hand of their son Nick, who reportedly had drug addiction problems and other issues. He's now been charged with murdering his parents. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump Derangement Syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights, as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. Now, as I said, the reaction to this abominable post was widespread. There's no evidence whatsoever that any of that is true when it comes to Mr. Reiner, but I like to focus on the last statements he made. The Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. Again, this shows how much Trump is sleepwalking through the American landscape. He is completely and utterly, totally ignoring reality. The Sun, British paper, published on December 12 the following article. Donald Trump was on the stump of the bellwether swing state of Pennsylvania, addressing a rally of cheering red-capped fans. Yet instead of leaning into the issue that is quite literally draining American voters' wallets, the president declared that prices were not a real problem anymore and dismissed the Washington buzzword of affordability as another Democrat hoax. Here's the problem. You can tell people drowning in bills that everything is rosy. Working Americans are feeling the pain of a cost of living saga that seems to never end. Eating, clothing, and healthcare bills are huge and will probably be huger next year. Poll after poll show a brutal reality. Americans feel battered. 4 in 10 say it's the worst cost of living they have ever experienced. Twice as many voters say President Trump, not Joe Biden, is responsible for the current state of the economy. That should be a wake-up call for his administration that faces a battle for its survival. in the next year's midterm elections. Despite branding Biden as sleepy, it looks increasingly like it is President Trump sleepwalking, here's that word again, into an electoral disaster in 2026. Meanwhile, his mega base is tearing itself apart, with infighting, and scores of Republican politicians are throwing in the towel rather than defending seats next year. Voters are not insane. They just want to know someone in Washington lives on the same planet as they do, not sleepwalking through America. And when you are in the White House showing off a new golden mega ballroom, while regular Americans are struggling to pay the bills, the optics ain't great. Warning signs are everywhere. But it made lots of noise. Donald Trump's tariff experiment does not appear to be working. Meanwhile, the promised surge in US manufacturing has not materialized. Trump defended his import taxes rate this week, urging the public to stop buying cheap Chinese goods. Well, the problem is, suffering Americans will buy the cheapest goods they can get, no matter where they come from. Unless there is a drastic and fundamental change in Trump's approach, he will pay dearly during the next midterm elections. The concept that Trump is sleepwalking into domestic disaster can be heard now more often, but it's not just domestic disaster. It's also talking about international disaster. We already talked about the Ukrainian-Russian situation, but let's talk about the Gaza Strip, because that's also another failure, the way it turned out. Israel 365 News wrote on December 14. The plan championed by the Trump administration is on the verge of being hijacked, not by Israel, but by the very states that have spent years arming, financing, and glorifying Hamas. At the Doha Forum, Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey dispensed with diplomatic subtleties and openly demanded changes that would render the entire plan meaningless. Their proposed revisions would force an Israeli withdrawal before Hamas disarms, insert an international force that refuses to confront Hamas, and hardwire Hamas' continued rule into the future of Gaza. The astonishing part is not that Qatar and Turkey are attempting this maneuver, it is that Washington is allowing it. The US is ignoring the plainly anti-Western ideological motives of its supposed partners, and in doing so, it is sleepwalking, here comes the word again, it is sleepwalking into a strategic catastrophe. Egypt's foreign minister was demanding that an international stabilization force deploy immediately, not to restrain Hamas, but to restrain Israel. Washington's strategic failure becomes glaring. For years, American policymakers have clung to the fantasy that Qatar and Turkey are moderating influences, countries that can rein in extremist groups. This is willful blindness. Qatar and Turkey do not moderate extremists, they sponsor them. They do not want a stable, demilitarized Gaza. They want a Gaza in which the Muslim Brotherhood retains its foothold. Qatar shelters Hamas leadership, glorifies Hamas on Al Jazeera, bankrolls Muslim Brotherhood across the region. Turkey's President Erdogan praises Hamas as freedom fighters, calls for Israel's destruction, funnels support to Brotherhood-aligned groups everywhere. To show you how much Trump is sleepwalking, he's calling Erdogan his friend. He says he's a tough cookie, but he's my friend. A dictator, somebody who brutally persecutes his opponents. Putting this all together, let me just say that I believe and have told you that, and still do, that God has chosen Mr. Trump to build the third temple in Jerusalem before Christ returns. Now, let me just say, this has to be happening. It is an absolute mandatory requirement that the third temple is going to be built before Christ returns. Now, recently a question was asked of the White House whether discussions have been held with Mr. Trump about building the third temple. And the answer was, well, it hasn't been discussed. I highly doubt that, because during his first term, people have been talking about building the third temple. A Jewish delegation was sent to Mr. Trump to ask him to build that third temple, and allegedly he responded by saying, well, how much time do I have left? Maybe he thinks today it's not the time yet to build the third temple, and to rather get involved with other issues which, comparatively speaking, are irrelevant. You see, the same approach was taken by the people in the Old Testament when God ordered them to build the second temple. They wouldn't do it. And God says, oh, you think it's not time yet? But you have the time to build your own houses? Don't you realize how much I'm taking away my blessings because of your refusal to do what I'm telling you to do? God tells Mr. Trump today the same thing, and he's telling him, get busy, get it done, don't wait too long, because time is short. Thank you very much for listening. This is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.
Standing Watch is a presentation by the Church of the Eternal God, P.O. Box 270519, San Diego, California 92198. More information is also available at our website, eternalgod.org.